It's the After Show with TelecomTV's Guy Daniels and Ray Maistre.
Yes, hello and welcome to the After Show on Telecom TV. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content, and we are broadcasting live at the end of day 2 of the Telecom TV Summit on the Green Network. Well, we have another great lineup of panelists who are returning for our live Q&A program. So we want to hear from you, and we will attempt to answer as many of your questions as possible over the next 45 minutes or so. Please don't leave it too late to submit your questions. Get them in as fast as you can using the form on the website below this video. As always, our co-host for the After Show is Ray Maistre, Editorial Director at Telecom TV. Now, earlier today, we featured roundtable discussions that focused on mobile networks and the distributed cloud, along with their associated energy consumption. There was a lot to unpack there, Ray.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 great discussions focused on critical areas of consideration for network operators. If they don't address energy efficiency in their mobile networks and distributed architectures, then essentially the economics of 5G, 6G, and all next-gen network architectures essentially are toast. And of course, such considerations are also addressed in our Green Network Summit poll. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the voting patterns in that poll have developed when we take a look at the updated results later on in this program.
Yes, absolutely. Please go ahead and vote in the poll, and do it now, please. Get your results, make them count. So on with the show, and joining us live on the program today are Yogesh Malik, who is EVP and CTIO for Tele2 and an NGMN board member. Javan Erfanian, Distinguished Member of Technical Staff at Bell Canada and also an NGMN board member. Jane Rygard, Head of Dedicated Wireless Networks and Edge Clouds at Nokia. Beth Cohen, SDN Product Strategies for Verizon. And Saima Ansari, who is Senior Partner Manager at Deutsche Telekom and the project co-lead for the NGMN's Green Future Networks. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all again. Now, there's lots of audience questions for us to get through. So, Ray, do you have our first question?
Yes, I do, Guy. Thanks very much. And Yogesh, this one is going to come to you. And the question is there a way of making mobile networks more power efficient in competitive markets? Isn't having multiple service providers all competing for the same customers in the peak hours an inefficient way for the industry to operate? Yogesh, what do you think about this?
First of all, thank you for having me on. I think, and as Tele2, I can also tell that this topic is extremely central to us. Competitiveness exists in every market. User habits are defined both by competition, but pandemic has also shown us that house has become very, very important. So if I leave the peak usage away, there are multiple things as operators we can do. The base of that is sharing our networks. If we share our networks, we can become much better. Then comes the site design. And we see that in Tele2, the more efficient we build our sites, the more efficient we build our designs, the better we can be in the power consumption. And we can actually start reducing power consumption as well per gigabyte. Then comes modernization. So as we are modernizing to 5G, we should also retract back 3G. And by doing that, we are able to save power as well and become more efficient. And the last one would be ML, and AI put together, the machine intelligence. And I think that is where we are learning every day, what can we do with the power amplifiers? And I think those are the continuous ways we can keep doing, irrespective of the peak hours, we can still address the power consumption from the very, very responsible mindset planning point of view. So that is the way we are thinking in Tele2.
Okay, great. Thanks very much, Yogesh. Obviously, a lot of things that Tele2 is looking at and doing there. And obviously, network sharing is definitely something that has come to the fore more in the past couple of years. Okay, if there aren't any more responses to this question, Guy, I'll hand over to you for the next question from our audience.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Ray. And we've had quite a few questions around the subject of collaboration and the role of associations. So, Javan, let me ask this question to you then. How does the NGMN's work impact on operators' efforts to move towards green networks? And especially in your case, how does Bell derive value and benefit?
No, that's a great question. Of course, there are different dimensions. First of all, Bell, similar to other leading operators around the world, we have been working on this for years, and we have targets as early as 2025 for our own operation, and have got certification for our energy management systems. And the same goes with a number of other leading operators around the world that we also work through NGMN and other alliances to drive this forward. So you can imagine that, first of all, it takes everybody. It's a circular economy we are talking about. It is not only scope 1, but also scope 2 and 3 in terms of eco design, in terms of equipment, in terms of availability, as well as diversity and possibilities. So working through NGMN is great in the sense of leading together with other bodies around the world, and a lot of us as leading operators around the world driving the work. And in many ways, it talks about metering, eco design, it talks about footprint, and also right now, as we have also announced, the question of benchmarking and the question of methodology, KPI, so that when we work on these as a community, end to end with the entire operation, and also impact on other sectors, we need to have an entire ecosystem in the circular economy, and also KPIs. As we move this forward, we need methodologies, we need to have similar experiences. It takes everybody to do this. So it goes both ways in terms of the work we have done to drive this, and as well it works. It's a great effort by NGMN with a number of us involved, and also in synergy with others to drive this forward end to end in a circular economy. Thank you.
No, thank you, Javan. Let me go across first of all to Beth for some thoughts and comments about the role of collaboration and working together on this agenda.
I think I agree with Javan. It's super important for us, for all the telecoms to work together. And of course, it's not just the telecoms, as Javan mentioned. It's the hardware manufacturers, it's the cloud providers, it's the energy, the energy generators, all of which need to contribute to this effort. I know Verizon has made it a top priority to be energy is efficient as much as possible. And, obviously energy efficiency also drives down costs. So, there's double motivation for keeping to this agenda.
Thanks very much, Beth. And Simon, you'd like to add to this topic?
Basically complementing what Javan said, and also what Beth was mentioning, that it's clearly a combined effort from the entire industry, which includes the telco operators, vendors, service providers. And I think that this is one of the beauty of NGMN Green Future Network, that we have a platform where all of these, including also the research institutions, that we are coming together to develop common methodology. So it's not like something which is already existing, but we also want to have a common view on the things that are existing, and to agree on these methodologies, to take a look and review about how we are measuring the carbon footprint of the services that we provide, how we can improve the energy consumption, how we can improve the energy efficiency of the network. And last year, if we look into the phase 1 of the Green Future Networks from NGMN, we developed a series of white papers which have been released. So 3 white papers have already been released on the sustainability aspect. So how, as a telecom operator, we can consequently save our energy and also deliver on the commitments that we have already made. And then second paper was related to the energy efficiency of the mobile networks, where we have many concrete recommendations for the operators about either using the sleep modes for the radio access network, or to better utilize the spectrum, or how exactly we can have end-to-end service footprint calculation. All of these topics have been addressed in concrete details, where 5G was also defined. All the sleep modes from 5G were also defined. And the third paper was dealing more in the direction of the life cycle assessment of how vendors are manufacturing the products. Exactly, we can look into each and every aspect of that manufacturing, including packaging as well, which is playing an important role. So I think that these papers have already built a concrete foundation of the work. And this is also what we continue in this year. So in 2022, we are following up on several topics within the Green Future Network. There will be a very concrete work which we are now defining with around 20 to 25 companies from the ICT sector to work on the energy consumption in the disaggregated networks, to identify what exactly goes into the components. For example, what are the raw materials used there, especially how we look into the life cycle assessment when considering these critical raw materials, which are very important for us. Ecosystem water footprint is also one of the topics which we want to touch, which haven't heavily been considered, or let's say haven't been studied so far. So these are some of the topics which we want to definitely look into in this second phase of the Green Future Networks.
Thank you, Simon. A lot of work being done there. Well worth looking at those white papers. Well, in that case, let's move on. Ray, let me hand back to you for our next question.
Okay, great. Thanks, Guy. So our next question, we're going to put this one first to Jane. So Jane, what metrics does the industry need to adopt for operators and also the supplier ecosystem? And can we self-regulate these metrics? So I guess these metrics are about measuring energy efficiency and other sustainability metrics. So is there anything that can be adopted, and can this be self-regulated?
So I think actually the previous question answered a lot of the comments on the metrics itself, right? So it's quite clear that we need to come to an agreement on how we measure, because otherwise we can't, first of all, make an end-to-end calculation of what is the full impact we have as an industry. But at the same time, how can we compare if it's apples and bananas all over the place? So I think it's clear, also based on the previous comments, that we need to have a common way of defining and measuring the parts. And we need to combine that into the overall science-based targets that exist. So what is the metrics that we do when it comes to efficiency, sustainability, so that we don't, again, make a separate little way of looking at the world from our perspective, but that we also put it into perspective for the bigger society aspects. I think that's quite clear. We need to have it. And that also comes to saying, can we self-regulate? I think to that extent, if we agree on what there is, we have two topics here. That one thing is we have to make sure that we don't create a separate ecosystem to regulate things to be looked at, right? We all have the same purpose of why we're doing it. So I don't think we should go into saying that these things have to be an extra regulatory part, but of course we need to have a common agreement of what there is. But we are very, very famous on the telecom side to then create, when we say regulatory frameworks, then we create an extra layer that also becomes an extra management layer, that becomes an extra testing layer, that becomes an extra everything else. And I think in the terms of if the goal is that we need to be a little bit more lean and a little bit more efficient in what there is, that at least is something we need to be clear on, that we don't create just a layer for the sake of the layer in terms of regulatory part. So we need to come to a part of saying what can be tested, how open can you be on what you're testing without then having to follow a full certification program.
Absolutely. We don't want to be inefficient in looking at energy efficiency, that's for sure. Javan, let's come to you next.
I think I agree with what Jane mentioned, and also it shows the significance of the work that NGMN is also doing together with the rest of the ecosystem, as Simon also mentioned. So we can see that at high level, we can indicate what we have achieved in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of impact, in terms of the amount of kilowatt hours of renewable energy, and so on. At Bell, we have done a complete, end-to-end work in terms of our operation, in terms of energy efficiency, fleet modernization, the renewable energy, and everything. From the other end, it's good as an industry not only to provide methodologies and KPIs and common ways of measuring this, as Jane said, for all scopes, but also look at the targets, not just what we have achieved, so that what we mean by carbon neutrality targets and get into specifics. So the work that has been ongoing is significant, and the next steps in terms of what Saima and Jane said and what NGMN and others are doing is becoming also significant, not just in what we achieve, but also how it compares with achieving the targets. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can feel the industry sort of coalescing around these common goals. Beth, we'll come to you next, and then Yogesh.
So I just wanted to say, I think a lot of, I agree that that additional regulatory frameworks is, they may or may not be necessary. Ideally, we don't need them. But speaking from a person who lives in the United States, and obviously, I wouldn't say there's nervousness in the rest of the world around the United States commitment to energy efficiency in general. And so I think what's really going to drive it, and it certainly drives it within the telco world, is the capability, cost efficiency, right? So energy efficiency, for the most part, once you've done the investment, is also cost efficient. And we've seen that with the drive down in prices for wind generation, solar power, batteries, all the accoutrements that are needed to support green energy and green services are, the prices are coming down. So that's a great motivation, particularly telcos, a telco operator are, sustaining services, right? It's not one and done. We're running constantly, right? We're paying for that energy for those routers and those 5G units and everything to be running all the time. So we just have to be smarter about it, to make sure that we are more efficient, and in whatever way it is. But again, the motivation has to be not only good citizenship, but also cost efficiency.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Great point there, Beth. Yogesh, let's come to you next.
No, I think a lot of good points have been made. Where I would like to elaborate this conversation is to a mindset. While we believe telcos are moving there are many, many industries which are moving in the same direction. Waste processing, production, logistics, and everyone is going through various challenges. And I think here's where the mindset of open to learn, open to share is going to be critical as we are on this journey. So that is the point I would like to encourage everyone. And actually that will then show that we can learn from each other and broaden our horizon beyond telco as well, and kind of learn with pride.
Absolutely. There's a great deal to learn from other verticals, and I'm sure those verticals can also learn a lot in many ways from the telecoms industry as well. Jane, we'll come back to you for a quick comment, and then over to Saima. So Jane first.
Yeah, so I was actually thinking on some of this when we look at the metrics as well. I think it's despite the money part that Beth was also talking about, I think it's important that we, from an industry perspective, look at what are the targets and what is the foundation that the rest of the industries are then discussing these science-based targets on. That we make sure that they fit us, but at the same time that we use the same kinds as the rest, because otherwise we as an industry are not going to be part of the bigger sustainability discussion. And as companies, for all of us, right, it is an end-to-end chain. It's not that we can take one part of it out in a separate item. The network, from a Nokia perspective, well, how do I produce it? How do I ship it? All of the rest that comes with it. But then also, how is my product being used in the end? And where does this count in all of this part? So that we all have a holistic view, individually, but then also as an industry towards our other industries, because otherwise it becomes, again, we're not comparing the right things together. Sorry, that was a very long comment, right? Not very short.
No. But a great point. It's worth reiterating. This holistic view is absolutely critical to all of this work that is done. Simon, let's come to you.
Yeah, just wanted to pick up on the measurement part, which Jane raised in her previous comment. And I think this is one of the most critical aspects when we look into the reduction of energy in our networks, because you can't really optimize something which you can't measure. And when it comes to measuring, I'm not saying that we are not measuring what's going in our networks and we don't have any data. It's just that there are some discrepancies when it comes to the concrete data, what amount of power is going into which equipment and exactly where. So I think that identification of all those gaps and then filling them up as soon as possible together with the help of our vendors, equipment manufacturers, is going to be very important. And I think this is something which we have picked up in NGMN, and we are working currently with some of our vendors to fill those gaps, and hopefully we will release this paper soon. But I think that in general, also on across the whole network, it's really going to be important that we measure correctly with the common methodology, and then this will definitely help us to optimize the power consumption in network.
Absolutely. Fantastic initiative. And I'm sure everybody hopes that common methodology will be in place for everybody to use. Okay, well, obviously a great question, elicited a lot of fantastic responses. But I think at this point we'll move on to the next question. So back over to you, Guy.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Absolutely great set of comments there. A reminder to our viewers, please keep the questions coming. And here's the next one that we've just received, and it references one of our earlier panels. Beth, could you please comment a little bit on why network disaggregation might or might not deliver the green cloud we expect? And this question comes off the back of the panel where we talked about the green distributed cloud earlier.
Yes, excellent follow-up. Let me get into a little more detail about what I meant. So disaggregation has been, hardware disaggregation has been sort of the goal, let's say, of cloud and edge, for that matter, and telecoms for a long time. Software-defined networking is assuming full hardware disaggregation. So the concept's been around for a couple of years, and the idea, of course, is that you use common hardware, standardized hardware, and that it's the software that's running on top of it doesn't really care what the hardware is. So the idea is you can swap it out. It gives you more freedom to choose the platforms, all good stuff. The reality is that with networking, networking is still highly dependent upon interfaces, which are proprietary. And so that causes hardware disaggregation to be not as efficient as one might think, and therefore, of course, more costly, and of course, less green at the same time. So all of these are a balance between the ease of swapping out hardware and swapping out software. So the assumption is that you can change the software on the fly without changing the hardware, which of course does reduce your footprint in the amount of time you need to change hardware out. So that reduces that's more green, but on the other hand, you're running less efficiently because you're tied to the hardware, so that's the trade-off. So hopefully I haven't gotten too much down into the technical rat hole.
Well, thanks for elaborating on that, Beth. Much appreciated. Jane, would you like to comment on this particular aspect?
Yeah, I was just thinking when Beth was talking that there's actually one thing more from a networking perspective that where we have to take things into account, because when we talk about mobile networks, we do still have some real-time requirements that are slightly different, and therefore have a tendency that we design for peak and not for average. Whereas on a normal cloud design, at least, you could be much more saying, I'm okay with the average because I can wait a little bit before I need the rest compute cycle or whatever I need to come into. So at least we see from an energy point of view, and this is very much tied onto a radio discussion as such, but if I don't design for peak, that means I might not have the resources that I need at the time where I actually have the need on the real time. So sometimes we need to find out, when going back to what Simon said, and we need to optimize, and we need to find that level between what are we accepting of an optimization when it comes to the energy efficiency compared with the optimization of the performance. Because on real-time parts, I might not be able to do both at the same time. So it just dawned on me when Beth was talking about the networking part and how things can be seen from a cloud perspective.
Oh, okay, thanks for that, Jane. Well, we will go back to Beth for some follow-up later, but first of all, let me go to Javan first, and then we'll go to Yogesh. So, Javan.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to emphasize on a couple of points that were made. One is, for sure, all of these efforts are done at the same time that we provide the superior network and superior experience. So having more efficient operation, having more eco design, having disaggregation in terms of agility and footprint, having renewable energy, and so on. These should all work in favor without compromising anything. So the question of optimization is valid in the sense that we do all of this while we make even the user experience better. The other thing is, I like to focus on the opportunity that this aggregation provides. But as Beth and others have said, we probably need more to make sure all those assurances are there in terms of performance, in terms of trust, and in terms of all the things that we do and we at best. So the idea which we have already started is something that as a community, as ecosystem, we have to continue working on, in the sense that we provide that agility with highest level of performance. At the same time, it allows us to liberate the functions, liberate the control plane, liberate the smart core in a converged way, so that, as Yogesh also said earlier, dynamically and intelligently we can do things, and that's the way forward. So yes, there's more work that we all need to do as an ecosystem to make that happen. And also, these are by no means should be at the expense of performance or user experience. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Javan. And let's go across then to Yogesh for some additional comments.
Things may look out of control when it comes to peak, but devil is in the details. Peak sometimes is caused by pricing plans. So I think we have to be mindful that we need to work together as one operator, one company, retail, all the way to provisioning, in such a way that we do not just let the peak be there, but we got to address the peak, because everything, if we design for the peak and at real time, and we do not control that peak, then we'll see ourselves consuming a lot more than needed. So that was the point I wanted to add.
Yeah, good point. Thanks, Yogesh. Beth, let me just quickly come back to you for some final roundup, because this one, obviously, this whole question derived from the earlier panel today where you mentioned this.
So I want to touch on, absolutely agree with Jane and others on the points raised related to cloud and elasticity. But I think we're also talking about, there's two different efficiencies. There's the efficiency of the hyperscaler type, large cloud, which of course the telecoms all have their own large clouds. And in fact, we use the hyperscalers as well, where the efficiency is gained in the ability to, optimize across a larger, with the hyperscaler, it's across a larger base, user base, and in the case of hyperscalers, company base, in the case of telecoms, the user base, and also at the edge. And I think that the disaggregation is different at the edge versus within the core, in terms of how efficient you can run, how much you can smooth out the operations. The telecoms are getting smarter about building for Black Friday, so to speak, and not building for Black Friday as much as they used to. But there's still the issue of everybody wants to call their mother on Mother's Day, and it saturates the network. And how do you deal with that?
Great, thank you, Beth. And that's something that came up yesterday on the after show as well, about provisioning for demand. Thanks very much for all those comments. We best move on. Ray, let me hand back to you for our next question.
Thanks, Guy. So our next viewer question, we're going to put this one first to Saima. So looking at scope 3, where most of the operators' emissions are allocated, what measures can operators take to reduce these particular type of emissions?
Very good question, because scope 3 is a beast which we all need to look into, because 85%, at least from Deutsche Telekom's perspective, so we have our 85% emissions coming only from scope 3. And scope 3 is something which is clearly directly out of our control. So we don't have a direct control over what's happening. And if we look at all the different things which we can do, I think some of the top candidates would be to work together with the vendors, because getting towards net zero and achieving those targets, it's more like a journey. And this journey, it is something where we need to bring our vendors together on board, and then only we can reach our goal. So one of the things which comes directly on my mind, which we also are doing currently at Deutsche Telekom, that we are working with our both tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers to bring across the message of how relevant the emissions are in our supply chain, and how exactly we can support also to reduce them. And this is something which is not something which we will only talk about, or we will only give some kind of recommendations to the vendors, but this is something which we want to make it more concrete towards the vendors, that it's a message that DT is not only talking about, but actually will take actions. And that's the reason we also bring in the sustainability aspect into our procurement process, which means that we not only look into the technology and pricing of a certain equipment when we are buying it, but we also look into the sustainability aspects of what we are buying. And this is something which we have already announced since last year, which we want to follow up and roll out for hopefully all the tenders for this year moving forward, so that the vendors have a clear indication of the products which we as telco operators need. And I think this is one thing which I can also recommend in the industry, that we make sustainability as one of the core criteria based on which we make the decisions. And then later on, this will definitely support us in bringing the circular economy business models, and thinking and rethinking about how we can reuse and reuse different things. So these are the two things which we are doing. Another aspect is, again, comes the transparency aspect, that once we know what exactly is happening in our supply chain, we can take actions out of it. And this is one of the reasons we are participating in the CDP program, and asking all of our suppliers to also fill in the details of the emissions, not only in the supply chain, but also what they are allocating towards DT. And then we are going through these numbers, crunching them down, trying to find where exactly what we can optimize, and then work our way through it. So these are the different elements which we are trying our best. And I think that there is no one key answer to this question which could help us to reduce those emissions. But I think that there are many different aspects which we have to look into, and then bring them all together to make sure that our emissions are decreased. And this will help the entire industry and our vendors as well.
Well, of course, if this is something that Deutsche Telekom is looking at, it's no surprise then that all the vendors will be looking at this very closely as well. So let's come to Jane for the next comment on this.
Yeah, but I was actually just thinking so the point is that from a Nokia as a vendor, my scope 3 includes the use of all my equipment around the world, right? So you can say, coming back to the earlier questions on partnering and everything else, I can't report my numbers without knowing the consequence of the products I'm sending out, right? So you can say Nokia could reduce some of our emission by ensuring that all the customers goes to green energy. So in that sense, it's not like it's as an industry, we are all dependent on each other, because scope 3 is not for me alone, is not for Saima alone, right? It's not for Beth alone. So we're all in the same boat in that sense, that we need to work together to get it done, because it impacts all of us in the end-to-end view of what there is. So I just want to say that exactly scope 3 is quite complicated, because we impact each other.
Absolutely, and I guess this is why we need the common methodologies and the collaboration in the industry. So let's come to Javan next, and then Yogesh. So Javan.
Yes, thank you. I think I agree with exactly what Saima and Jane mentioned. It takes all of us, and that also shows the significance of the work that we do as a community and also at NGMN, because it's not just about rewarding one leading company as we lead this work, but also creating an ecosystem where there's diversity, where there's priority, as was mentioned. Saima used the words to show that we are serious. This is exactly it, that it becomes a collective ecosystem priority and a great deal of diversity in there. And also, as Jane mentioned, it is everybody, and she rightfully mentioned not just Nokia's equipment everywhere, but the operator's role everywhere. When it's a continuum. You mentioned earlier that the verticals learn from us, we learn from verticals, but as you agree, we are also connected to each other in terms of our operation. Even in IoT, when we impact a lot of the resources, that and other, whether it's factory waste collection, gas station, fire hydrants, cities water, it also helps the circular economy. It helps the optimization of fleet. It helps in terms of intelligent and dynamic approach to the targets we're talking about. It is a continuum for all of us, and of course, leading operators are very much aware of that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Javan. And Yogesh, to finish us off on this question.
I think Javan's point is spot on. I think we are entering scope 3. We should not be, it is big, it is collective. And the thing which I wanted to share, in Sweden, for example, large enterprises and now small and medium enterprises ask for us to be proving in the tender process to be sustainable. So I think this requirement is now growing, not only for us as operator for consumer, but us to become an operator for a large enterprise also. So I think that's developing more and more, and it's becoming a table stake or a hygiene.
Absolutely. Table stakes is what we're looking at here for everybody, of course. Okay, thank you very much, Yogesh. And at this point, because the time is moving on, I will hand back to Guy.
Yep, thanks, Ray. Time is moving on, but what a great discussion we're having. Well, we better check in on our audience poll for this year's Green Network Summit. One question, 5 multiple choice answers. I'm afraid you can only pick one. And the question we have asked this week is, how can telcos most effectively reduce their energy consumption levels? And you can see the up-to-the-minute voting right here. Source more power efficient technology is just edging ahead there of the sharing of physical resources and the use of AI and analytics. Doesn't look too good for the public cloud though at this time. So if you have yet to vote, then please do so, because the more votes, the better. And we're keeping the polls open for the rest of this week. And we'll take a look at the results later on Telecom TV. Right, back to our Q&A, because we are, 41, 42 minutes into the program, so time is moving fast, but we still have time for at least one more question, hopefully two. So over to you, Ray.
Okay, thanks, Guy. So the next question, we're putting this and opening this up to our whole panel here today. The question is, are there any strategies to raise the awareness of green network within the industry and also beyond the telecoms industry to customers and the general public as well? So any education, I think, we've already heard a lot about the work that's going on within the industry, but are there any programs, any strategies going on to take this message broader to the ecosystem and out to customers as well? Does anybody want to come in and answer this question at all? Any takers? Javan, did I see your hand up there?
When we make this a priority, it is in all of our communication. It is part of our messages, part of our press release, part of our websites, and part of also our discussion with the ecosystem, with vendors, with RFI, RFQ. So in every way that communication is increasing and methodologies and strategies will further be aligned when we do benchmarking with the rest of the leading operators and partners around the world. But I have to tell you that in for years this has started when there is a willingness to do this as a priority, it becomes part of our motto, and it has been part of that front and center and recognized by other wireless alliances and certification, and we communicate that to our customers in general and enterprise partners for sure in particular.
Okay, great. Thanks, Javan. And Yogesh, we'll come to you next.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to share what we are doing. So leading in sustainability is at the center of Tele2. And what we do with the customers also is there are opportunities on refurbished handsets. And then on top of that, when we talk about AI, we should not just involve our partners in this. We are also working together with the leading schools, universities, so that we can engage that more from a societal point of view and kind of build that education platform. And we can see that we have derived certain AI algorithms which we could not have done ourselves. And the real good brains were the youngsters who have been leading in the School of Economics. So that's so good to see that kind of a collaboration as well.
Great, thanks, Yogesh. Jane, will come to you next, and then to Beth and Simon. So, Jane.
I think Yogesh just said everything I wanted to say, so you can leave me out.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Jane. Beth, over to you. What's Verizon doing to get this message across?
Yeah, I was. That's exactly what I was going to say. So Verizon is very committed to being green, and I think we've announced, and I can't remember the date, but we announced that we were going to be 100% sustainable by some date, which I don't want to be misquoted on. But I think it's important that our customers value that we are moving in that direction. So, for us, we see it as a positive. It's a net positive to our brand, and it's a net positive to our customers, and of course, it's a net positive to us. So it's a win-win for everybody. But there are unfortunately crosswinds, political crosswinds in some parts of the country where sustainability is, let's say, doesn't have as much priority. But in general, we feel that it's important to make sure that our customers know that we're committed to it, because we see it as a enhancement to our brand and enhancement to the value to our community, giving back to the community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, I think you'll find those crosswinds blow on an international scale as well. So Simon, we'll come to you to complete this question. So over to you.
I would also say that sustainability is definitely one of the key pillars when it comes to the strategy of Deutsche Telekom. And we also saw it from our customer side that our customers are demanding more and more sustainable product and services solutions from their operators. And this is one of the reasons we also try to make sure that we communicate this message as much as possible, either through our websites, through our webinars, and also through our shops and the products that we are selling. We have green shops, many green options for the customers to look into, and also we have switched to completely, let's say, sustainable packaging also, because this is the first thing which comes to attention when you buy a product from a telecom shop, that how it is packed. And almost actually everything, 100% of the packaging of all the telecom based branded products are fully recyclable. And we also, at least from Deutsche Telekom, all over the group, by 2021, end of 2021, we have completely switched to the renewable energy. So our customers are already connecting over the green network. So I'm really proud to say that. And on top of that, the work that we do together with NGMN and their communities and alliances is also a way how we want to teach also the whole industry about what's happening in the telco operator sector. And through these white papers which we have released last year, there is a lot of information which is available online about the efforts, initiatives, and strategies for the upcoming technologies, also of how we build 5G and 6G in future in a sustainable way, in an energy efficient way. So all of these things which we are trying to communicate through these things. Another highlight that I would also like to mention is the Green Magenta and Good Magenta label, which we have released from Deutsche Telekom. So Green Magenta is something which we are labeling to the products which have an energy efficient production and manufacturing. So we have a full-fledged criteria to identify which are the products and solutions which can be labeled for the Green Magenta, and the same goes also from the societal aspect of the good part, so Good Magenta labeling. With some operators, we also launched eco rating for the smartphones to also educate the users on what exactly they are buying at them. So when you go to buy a washing machine, you always look, yeah, this is A, B, C category, and this will consume less power. Let me buy that. Why not we have such options for the other smartphones and these kinds of equipment? So this was one of the motivations behind launching the eco rating, and I'm really happy that it is successfully launched. And people can now already check this on the website about what exactly goes into this criteria and what we mean by the eco rating. So I'm really happy that such initiatives are coming across, and we are happy to participate in these kinds of initiatives and lead them, and also looking forward to build many such things in the near future, so that our customers know what kind of efforts are going into bringing sustainable and green services to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these kind of initiatives are already much more noticeable out in the general public, in the market, and also within the industry. And it does seem like it's only a matter of time before we hear about green tariffs in the industry as well. Okay, thank you everybody for your answers. And I think at this point, looking at the flashing red light in the corner of our virtual studio, it's time to hand back to Guy.
Yes, thank you, Ray. We are indeed out of time. That is the end of our after show for today. Thank you so much to all of our guests who joined us for this live program. It's been an absolutely fascinating discussion, and to the audience for sending in those questions. And that's also the end of the Green Network Summit for 2022. Our coverage will continue on Telecom TV, and I'm sure it will feature in our next event in February, which is the return of Spotlight on 5G.
Yes, Spotlight on 5G will be taking a deep dive into the latest developments in all of the key areas of 5G networking and services, including the core, Open RAN, private networks, and much more. February is going to be a very big month as the industry builds up to MWC 22, however that plays out.
Yes, who knows? But we'll be here. So please join us for our Spotlight on 5G coverage. Until then, thank you for watching and goodbye.
The after show was recorded in front of a live online audience.